Today, it is episode 15. How are you going to say that in German?
15. Das ist Episode 15.
Welcome, everyone. I don't have any German language acquisition whatsoever, so I can't even reply to that.
Well, that's good because we should have our own separate talents so that we are individuals and not as one.
Yes, yeah. And this is what you bring to the table. In-depth knowledge of the German language.
I can speak GCSE level German, the equivalent of a 15-year-old.
Fantastic. But you did it for A-level.
I may or may not have had to persuade my dad to let me drop it for A-level when I was the only person on the course that either wasn't actually German or hadn't lived in Germany, and my confidence just went poof. And the teacher taught in German. He wouldn't give you an instruction in English, he'd give it in German.
Mhm.
And I was the only person who probably thought in English and then had to translate it. So I felt a bit overwhelmed by that. I wish I'd have kept on with it though.
Yeah, that would have been cool. That would have been cool. But
Let's talk about our guest today, Danielle Brown MBE, Paralympic gold medalist twice.
yeah, she was a fantastic guest. I had so many questions to the point I was sat there like, don't ask that. Don't ask that. Don't ask that. And there were questions like, what did you eat when you were there?
She said they had a free fast food establishment on site in the Paralympic village.
Which you wouldn't think, would you? That would be synonymous with elite athletes, but there you go. We talk about it in the episode, but I remember being in London when the London Olympics were on, and it
Yeah.
was just incredible. Loved it.
Yeah, I remember the Olympic torch, my hometown of Wakefield, where I lived at the time, it got walked through Wakefield, and there was a guy, TV star and disability campaigner, John O. Lancaster from Wakefield. So he has Treacher-Collins syndrome, which affects 1 in 50,000 people.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually really sad. He says that his birth parents left him in the hospital, but he was then adopted by his mum Jean at the age of 5, and he raises lots of awareness for disabilities. And I remember it was a big deal because he carried the Olympic torch through Wakefield, so we were all excited to watch that.
Oh, that's cool. Did you go and watch?
Yeah, I did, yeah. Wakefield's quite a small city, so everyone sort of knows everyone to some extent. So, although if you asked him about me, he probably didn't know who I am. I felt like I knew a celebrity.
I think he might not know who I am.
Potentially never heard of me, but yeah, I did feel like I was in amongst celebrities, and it was great. Yeah, loved it.
I love that.
So I've got some questions for you. Thought I'd test your Paralympic knowledge. We're very excited by any sort of big sporting event because we like the camaraderie and the atmosphere. So we've always liked the Olympics and Paralympics, but having Danielle speak to us taught us so many things that we'd never even thought of. So I want to share some with our listeners before they get into the episode.
I'm ready.
So, first question. In the Paralympic village, athletes from different countries often swap what item as a tradition of friendship?
Is it a towel?
It's not very hygienic. Nope.
Is it some shoes, like some flip-flops or something like that?
No.
They're my guesses.
Okay, is it A, national snacks, B, small enamel badges, or C, a piece of training equipment?
I'm going to go for A, national snacks, because that is what I would want.
I would too, but it is B, small enamel badges. Danielle speaks about the badges in the episode, so that's one for people to listen out for. Question number 2.
Oh, go on. I'm going to say I was still on the snacks. I was going back to the snacks.
If it were snacks, which country would you make an absolute beeline for their
Japan.
area? Just Japan.
All day, every day. Straight to them. Get all those snacks. For anybody who is listening and has been in a Japanese 7-Eleven and has eaten some of those sandwiches that are in there, honestly, I can't stress to you how incredible the snacks are there. So,
Well, you once brought me back an array of Japanese snacks.
still good.
Next question.
Yeah.
How much do you think a London 2012 medal weighed? I'm going to give you 3 options of comparison here. Do you think it weighed close to the same as a smartphone,
Uh-huh.
A large loaf of bread or a bag of sugar?
How big is a bag of sugar?
A kilogram.
Okay.
Okay, I've got the weights for these things. So a bag of sugar is a kilogram, a large
Uh,
loaf of bread is 400 grams, and the average smartphone is 170 grams.
okay, I'm gonna say a loaf of bread then. No, I'm not. I'm not. I'm gonna say sugar.
You were right with a loaf of bread. A
Annoying.
large loaf of bread, though, to be precise.
Mhm.
Imagine doing all those interviews and everything after, and you're just walking around
That
with the
was
equivalent of a large loaf of bread around you. Yeah.
yeah, like very heavy neck.
Help. Last question. How big is the centre of the target in archery in comparison to these three items? Which one is it? Is it the most similar to in size? Is it similar to the size of an orange, similar to the size of a dinner plate, or similar to the size of a drinks coaster? And I would like to add the length at which this is being shot is 70 metres, which is the equivalent, or thereabouts, of 8 double-decker buses in a line.
Wow. Okay, so I'm glad that you gave me
Mm.
the distance, and I'm glad that you gave me all the parameters there because I was going to say something like a 10p coin, but I'm thinking maybe more of a darts board. I think it's the size of an orange.
It is the size of an orange. Well done. So Danielle, for example, won gold in 2 different Olympics, approximately 8 double-decker buses.
Away from the target. I can confirm as well, I have done an archery class. So when, when
In the middle-class upbringing is this?
I can tell you how hard it was with like baby equipment, never mind the huge archery stuff that they
Wow.
used. It was hard. I don't feel there's much else for us to say other than we hope you enjoy the episode. Hello, and welcome back to STEM Conversations, a podcast created to share stories, ideas, and experiences shaping science, technology, engineering, and maths. I'm Sarah, and I'm joined by my co host, Ash.
Today, we are so excited to be joined by Danielle Brown. Danielle is a 2-time Paralympic gold medalist in archery, a 5-time world champion, and she held the world #1 spot for her entire career. She's also made history as the first disabled athlete to represent the English team at the Commonwealth Games, where she won gold. Since retiring from elite sport, she's successfully transitioned into a career as a marketing professional, an award-winning author, and an international speaker. Danielle, welcome.
Hi, it's great to be here. Do you know what? I do find it fascinating. I love doing things like this because I think, as we'll talk about, when you do the intro, it's just success, 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 and
Yeah.
the actual reality is very different.
Today we're talking about what it really takes to perform at the highest level and how those lessons translate beyond the sport. But before we get into that, what have you been working on recently and what's exciting you the most right now?
Oh my goodness. So I've always got a couple of book ideas on the go. I just love doing that. It's sort of my happy place, really. I'm busy working on stuff, and we'll see where that goes. But other than that, my speaking's really taking off, particularly in the DEI space.
Are you allowed to give us any spoilers about your book ideas, or do we need to wait and see?
Oh, do you know what? Publishing is just the weirdest world. Like, everything's hush hush until you're allowed to say something. So nothing sort of official at the minute, but just working on pulling together lots of different ideas.
Let's start at the beginning. How did you first get into sport? Was it something you were drawn to from an early age?
Yeah, and I think I've got my parents to thank for that. So my mum and dad were sort of both very active. They encouraged me to do lots of different activities growing up. I was never any good at them. And I know, I was so bad. I actually, I got a certificate. I did a kayaking course, sort of just tried it out. And I got a certificate that said achieve more swimming because I kept falling out of it. And that was typically my story with sport. I gave it a go, had a great time, but yeah, my results weren't fantastic.
Neither are mine still to this point. You've spoken about becoming disabled during your teenage years, which is such a formative time for anybody. How did that experience intersect with your ambitions at the time?
It was really tough. I always had these big dreams for the future. And when I became disabled, for me, it was a long process. I started with my condition when I was 11, but didn't get diagnosis till I was 16.
Wow.
That was my first trip to London was Great Ormond Street Hospital, and I was diagnosed with complex regional pain syndrome, which is a neurological condition that causes chronic pain. And for me, that's in both my feet all the time. So I was hoping that once I went to the doctors, they'd say what it was and then they'd be able to fix it. But I came away from that appointment learning that I got a disability and I had to learn how to live with it. There was no cure. It was about managing it. And the word disability just terrified me. I mean, it's not a sort of nice word, and I think it's been so badly misrepresented, underrepresented, and just really, really poorly understood that at the time I was just really scared. You know, I got these big dreams for the future, these big ambitions. I wanted to succeed. I just worried that I'd be held back because of my disability, not because I wasn't capable, but because of other people. I worried that they'd see the disability before me and my abilities.
I think there is that mindset that people probably don't realise they have, where they underestimate a lot of the time.
Yeah, and it happens a lot. And because my disability is so dynamic, sometimes I'll be using crutches, sometimes a wheelchair. I can do really short distances without aids at all. And I definitely get treated differently, like if I'm using the wheelchair versus the crutches.
I am just taking it back a little bit, where you said you went to hospital and you just assumed to find what the issue was and essentially treat it. And I think that's a really, I think I'm guilty of feeling that way about anything, especially in 2026. We need to prepare people for the fact that still in this day and age, we actually cannot cure everything.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because the disability movement in many respects is trying to move away from that obsession. You know, I think part of my desperation for a cure is that's kind of how the world's set up, and it's all about sort of trying to get you better.
So Danielle, what did it feel like the first time you stepped into the Paralympic environment? Was there anything about it that completely surprised you?
What really surprised me was how nice everything was. You know, everybody is there to hopefully win a medal. You know, that's why you turn up. So it's obviously fiercely competitive. But away from that, off the field, when you're back in the village, just everybody is super nice. Like you see somebody wearing GB kit, you sort of asking them who they are, what sport they do, like where they come from, and it's just amazing. But that then extends to all the other countries as well, and you exchange all the pin badges and you just make some brilliant friends and get to meet people from all over the world. So yeah, I was really, really surprised about that.
Do you know, like when you get the holiday blues or the festival blues, was it a little bit like that when it was back to reality?
Well, actually, it's two things. First of all, I was absolutely terrified I was going to end up stealing something when I came back because like honestly, the whole village setup is everything's free and you just go in there and you know like the big fridges that you see like in petrol stations, and you just sort of go to those fridges, you grab your drinks and you wander off with it, you go to the food stands, you grab your food and go eat it. So I was just so terrified that when I came back, I was just so used to grabbing my food and then disappearing. And the other thing is you get really ingrained. So like Beijing, we had red, white and blue polo shirts and t-shirts. And every day, so we looked as part of a team. We had a red day, a blue day and a white day. And it was just so weird when you got home because you'd wake up and the first thing you'd think of is it a white day today? Is it a red day or a blue day? And yeah, you just don't realise how quickly you get into those routines.
I lived in London actually in the 2012 Olympics and Paralympics. So and that atmosphere was incredible. I obviously wasn't competing, but even just being in London at the time that all the games were there, like it was incredible. There were people out speaking to each other, sat watching the Olympic and Paralympic games on massive screens. Like honestly, I still talk about it to this day, how nice the whole atmosphere of the city, like it changed absolutely everything, having the Olympic and Paralympic Games there and just watching it. So I can imagine, yeah, that camaraderie is something that you don't experience anywhere else.
Yeah, like 2012 is probably the first and only time in my life actually that I remember the country not being miserable all the time. You know, like the news is all doom and gloom and it's sort of all the negative stuff. And it's the first time that it really focused on the positives, and I think that then really sort of trickled down to the people and their interactions.
100%.
I would totally agree. Yeah, I miss it. It also was beautiful weather.
So we see the medals and we see the big moments, but what does the reality of the elite training look like to people like us that don't see it?
It's hard work, really hard work. So Olympic, Paralympic cycles work on a 4-year cycle. So it's 4 years of hard work in terms of the build up to the games. And I think what I always say is that being an athlete isn't something you pick and choose at. You know, it's not something you do 9 till 5, like a typical job, and then you get to forget about it and start again tomorrow. So every decision you make is all about that medal and is it going to help? And that includes like what you're eating, when you're eating, when you socialize, when you go to bed. So all of your life outside of sport is still, you're still doing it, basically. It's just, it's a whole lifestyle. So it's very tough in that regard. And I mean, the training itself is just really, really intense. I spent the sort of first part of my sports career, I was sort of balancing education and sport. That was really, really tough, particularly university. But then I started training full time.
I just cannot imagine the two together, because you're completely right. You know, going into a canteen or a cafeteria at university and being like, okay, what can I eat from here, which is going to help me get that gold medal? That's a lot of pressure for such a young age.
Yeah, and I'd say probably more the social side was the toughest.
That's what I was just thinking.
Yeah, you got a lot of people going out, wanting to have fun, and I did as well. You know, I wanted to make great friends, but I was also getting up at 6 in the morning because my university was super. They actually let me train in a sports hall 3 days a week before it opened up to the public.
Oh wow.
But that meant I had to be there for 6:30 before it officially opened.
Archery, the precision that you need for that, you cannot have a rough night's sleep and then be precise the next day. There's no way.
No. For London 2012, we had a test event, and it was really exciting because the same weekend we were doing this test event, the Olympic Stadium opened, and I was like part of that ceremony. So I had to shoot 2 arrows in front of, I think it was 48,000 people on these spinning targets. It was really cool, and I shot like one, and it was segments of blue or pink. I shot a pink, so that meant it was a girl's name. And then they sort of had these girls' names spinning, and I shot another name, and that was the girl that came out and pressed the buzzer, and the stadium was officially open. And it was so cool, and there were all these celebrities there, and it was just a really big event. But the thing is, I got such a buzz from it. When you get that adrenaline rush, and got back to the hotel, and I couldn't sleep. I was just sort of really buzzing, and I was so frustrating. I was trying to calm myself down, just couldn't do it. And yeah, then the next day I had to go into this test event, and I just really did not perform well at all. When I was in London, I didn't go to the opening ceremony because I'd have loved to have gone, but we were competing the next day, and I just thought, I've trained 4 years, and it would be so gutted with myself if I underperformed.
That's such a tough decision, isn't it? Like you said, you've been training for 4 years, but do you ever feel like, I wish I could just have all the elements of it?
I didn't see it that way. There were some really hard moments where you're like, this is tough. Like in an ideal world, I would have loved to have done that.
Yeah.
But I think you become so ingrained on the goal that nothing else matters, and it's quite interesting because I remember we had quite a few sessions around it, and I think the word sacrifice gets thrown around a lot around sport. And there's a session somebody did, and they said you shouldn't be using the word sacrifice, it's a choice. And I get what they were trying to do. They were saying it was a positive, but actually in a way I was like proud of the sacrifices I've made, like it was tough and it was hard, but actually those sacrifices meant I was getting closer to my goal.
So sport can become such a central part really of how somebody is known. How did you navigate moving on to the next chapter of your career?
So not very well, but I think I didn't have a particularly good exit out of sport. So after London 2012, the rules around classification changed. So every para-athlete has to be classified to determine whether their disability is severe enough to go to the Paralympics. And I'd always passed this, but under the new rules, I didn't. And ultimately, my condition, CRPS, is no longer eligible at the Paralympics. A few conditions got cut out, which was really, really hard. I found it really difficult. I found that I went through a complete identity crisis. I'm an elite athlete, then I'm not, literally overnight. I'm also a disabled person who wasn't disabled enough. And, sort of between the two of those massive identity changes, it was really, really hard to get my head round. And I always liken it, I felt like I'd been dumped in the middle of the ocean. I had to swim to shore and I didn't know what direction to pick. And I hadn't really planned for life after sport. I did a law degree, and whilst I enjoyed doing that, I didn't think that practicing law was for me. But I graduated with a first whilst I was competing. Wow. And I thought, with all my shiny gold medals, the first class degree, I'd walk into a job, which was a bit complacent of me because that wasn't the reality at all.
I just can't believe it. Just blows my mind.
Yeah, it's really tricky with classification. So you can also be too disabled as well for some sports.
Oh wow.
The categories don't always support all disabilities, which would be impossible in many respects. A line has to be drawn somewhere. It's just sort of where that line is drawn, how they draw it.
I can imagine as well, there's, again, I've not been an elite athlete, but, surprisingly. But I can imagine that support network that you lose when you leave elite sport is so difficult as well, because there is coaches, there's trainers, there's people that are supporting mental health, there's people that are supporting nutrition. And then suddenly when you move from that and all of that support network has gone, that idea of, you're in the middle of the ocean, the fact that you were able to navigate that, I think is incredible. And again, I imagine at a really young age.
Yeah, I was mid-20s at the time. My turning point was, so my partner was on the New Zealand team. So we actually met each other at the Commonwealth Games. He was on New Zealand able-bodied team and I was there for England. And we did long distance for about 5 years. So my fun fact is he would have been nearer if he lived on the International Space Station. For my birthday, he travelled over from New Zealand to completely surprise me. So I had no idea he was coming. He said he was going for a hike, and there's sort of loads of patches there with no phone reception or whatever. But my whole family had been planning this as well. One of my sisters went to pick him up from the airport. They did this huge dinner for me, and then he popped out of this box. This completely surprised me. I know. Everyone had pulled together and done it, and I just thought, do you know what? This is the team that I need. They've sort of got me. They're supporting me, and that really was that turning point for me to start taking the steps forward.
There's some serious strength in the family network, isn't there? Some serious strength.
Yeah. How many years did you do that long distance? Did you just say 5 or did I mishear you?
5, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, they were both competing, so it worked out quite nicely. He'd have a British summer and I'd have a New Zealand summer, so we were sort of...
2 summers a year.
Yeah, I know.
Disability remains underrepresented across many sectors. In your experience, where do you think progress still needs to happen?
Oh my goodness. It's really tricky. I would say that I feel disability in many respects lags way behind a lot of the other protected characteristics.
Yeah.
I think that it is still really poorly understood, and it is very complicated as well, so there are so many different conditions, but then each individual responds differently to those conditions. So actually feeling confident or having that understanding and baseline knowledge about it it's really tricky. And I think, even when you just look at media, and it's been great just seeing the diversity. Recently I've been going a little bit old school in terms of what I've been watching, and it's just amazing to see, if you compare it to what you see on TV now and the different representation, you're like, wow.
You may not know the answer to this, but has the Paralympics been televised as long as sort of the Olympics, or when was the Paralympics televised?
I don't know when it officially came on board, but what I will say is that from my own experiences, so I did the same thing, right? I won gold in Beijing, gold in London 2012, and in fact I actually probably performed slightly better in Beijing because the pressure wasn't quite as intense there. But after I won in Beijing, I had 2 interviews, and I think the Paralympics that night got a 2-minute segment on TV. And archery got a 30-second. We'd won 2 gold medals and a silver that day, and we got a good solid 30 seconds on national TV. When I won in London 2012, did the same thing, and I had 2 full days of media interviews. They were so packed, we were herded around London and sort of cabs and just trying to get to all these different studios, and it was great. But that sort of showed you how far in that 4 years it had really come. A lot of that was to do with the fact that Channel 4 picked up the rights, so they were educating people about different Paralympic sports, about the classification, so people could understand it and also get that excitement before it came on TV. And then through the games they just did an amazing job, and I think it's really sort of continued and picked up since then.
I've got so many questions. So obviously we write a script for this podcast, but then I've got so many questions like, how heavy are the medals? What does it feel like to stand on a podium? So there are people that genuinely want to be more inclusive, but they may worry about saying the wrong thing. From your perspective, what does meaningful inclusion look like in practice?
My genuine belief is that people have good intention, but I also feel that when people do have those good intentions, they don't want to offend people, they don't want to get things wrong, they want to be supportive. But if you flip it on its head, if you do get it wrong, that can cause a lot of distress to somebody. What you tend to find is that a lot of those good intentions turn into fear, they turn into silence, and it puts this really sort of prohibitive barriers in place where we don't talk about it. We don't have the gritty conversations that are needed to try and drive this forwards. You will make mistakes, and that's what you've got to get comfortable with. You've got to be comfortable with that discomfort, because everyone's going to get it wrong. Nobody has all the answers. Nobody is an expert across all the different protected characteristics. And then some that aren't protected as well, that probably should be. It will get a bit clunky, but what we can do is learn how to respond to those mistakes and learn how to gain that education, that understanding around it.
A lot of what you're saying there, I feel like really, I don't want to say resonates because it's such a buzzword, but it really resonated. And I know when we met before, I told you that my little sister has recently become disabled, and we constantly get it wrong. It's just about figuring out what's the right thing to do. And every single person has their own story and their own body and their own mind. And I don't think that we are able to have a one size fits all. I think for every person we're around, we just learn what suits them.
Absolutely. But and that's the really tricky part, isn't it? You know, we try to move away from those generalizations, those stereotypes. Stereotypes do get a really bad name for themselves, but it's the only way we can actually process information. If we sort of look at everything on an individual basis and actually try to step away from that and really relate to people individually, it's a really tough skill to.
Yeah, especially if you're meeting someone who you perhaps won't know on such a personal level, and you're just doing the best you can in that short space of time that you're in their company. I think we're very likely to make mistakes, but as long as we're aware and we're doing our best. So you sit at the intersection of being a woman and a disabled athlete. So that's two identities that have historically been underrepresented in sport and in leadership spaces. Have you found that those identities have shaped your experiences in a distinct way?
Well, that's a really good question. When I talk to lots of disabled people, like a lot of them will try, for example, to hide their disability when it comes to sending out CVs, and it's not something that they'll disclose. But, you know, especially when I was first looking for a job, if I didn't talk about the Paralympics, I'd literally have nothing to write. So, you know, my disability kind of sat front and centre. It's one of those things, isn't it? It's sort of considered bad practice to say, what happened to you? You know, we're talking about disability. But actually, that's the first question that the media ask you. You know, they sort of want to know what your disability is. So you get really used to talking about it. So I would say in some regards, my experience hasn't been a typical one. And I've had to use my disability as a USP. So it's something that I'm comfortable talking about. The more I engage in these topics around inclusion, the more I'm learning. I always thought as a kid, I never even considered having a sports career. And for many years, I just thought, oh, actually, it's because I wasn't good at sport. But then when I boil it down, it was really because of that lack of representation. I didn't see women in careers in sport. I didn't see them performing on TV. We didn't read about them in books. We didn't talk about them at school. And because there was such a huge erasure of that, I didn't think I could have a career in sport. And I look back and think how my mindset was really shaped by culture, by stereotypes, how things are represented. And just realising how much of an impact that's had on some of the choices that I've made through my life. So I definitely say like both of those have massively impacted me, some in a positive sense, but some sort of not as positive as well.
I think it's very similar. Ash and I talk about women, girls, non-binary people in STEM careers. I think it's very similar there. And a lot of the people that we speak to saying the same messages in terms of they didn't feel like STEM was always for them. So there just wasn't that visible representation. There wasn't somebody that looked like them.
I almost feel as well now, because a lot of our working life is us talking about underrepresented groups in STEM. I almost feel like it's acting as a buffer, and I'm forgetting how underrepresented they are because I am seeing and working closely with underrepresented groups daily. And then I'll read a statistic and I think, wow, I always think we've moved a little bit further on than we have, and we're definitely making good progress. But I always think we've made more than we have until I get a bit of a reality check.
It is like astounding when you look at the facts and stats behind it, isn't it? Because I think, like you say, if you're immersed in the world, you're having those conversations with the right people, you are seeing change. And I think it is really important to celebrate that change, because it'd be flipping soul destroying if we didn't. But unfortunately, there is still a long way to go. I never like to say people are wrong, because everybody's, I guess, entitled to their own opinion. But you can actually learn, even if you completely wildly disagree with somebody on these topics, you can learn something from them.
Yeah, I totally agree. We've talked about this a little bit already, but we're thinking a bit more broadly now. How do you think organisations could think more intentionally about inclusion?
So I always think that there's like two key ways to access that, and it's education and exposure. Having the right voices, amplifying those voices, and creating a platform for them to gain real understanding. Experts by experience is where it's at, sort of that lived experience is just really, really important to push things forward. But I feel organisations are trying to do the right thing. There is a commitment, a genuine commitment, or a sort of want to do the right thing.
That's reminded me of a conversation I was reading online the other day. I didn't get involved in it, but I was reading, when you scroll through all the comments on something, and it was about a celebrity who her children have got a disability, and I know nothing about it, and I wish I'd read a little bit more about it before I brought it up in this conversation. Anyway, there seems to be two sides of this argument, and one is, why is everyone listening now? Why is it taking a celebrity to talk about this? And, why is everyone listening to her? But then there's other people saying, well, she's using her voice for this really important thing, and we're so thankful for her in our community now. And yes, she didn't speak about it before, but that's because she didn't really know about it. But I do see this conversation that reminds me a lot of what you were just saying about the people with the experience should absolutely use their own voices where they feel comfortable doing so.
Oh, I love it. A really good, really interesting debate, actually. Yeah, always a tricky one, but I think my view on that one is that there's enough room. There isn't enough voices. We need more voices. So if people are sort of speaking about it, and typically you tend to find that the people speaking out about it are the ones that it's influencing and impacting. So if it has taken that personal experience, it's equally valid for anybody to talk about it, whether they're celebrity or not.
I am actually going to read up about that.
There's research linking sport participation to leadership development later in life. From your experience, what translates the most powerfully from sport into leadership?
Oh, that's so tricky. I literally copied and pasted my entire mindset, and very aware that you guys are in education, but I have to say sport has been my biggest and best teacher. That the skills that I learned and how applicable they are outside of sports. I really don't like how soft skills get called soft skills.
I hate that phrase too.
Yeah, like it just really undervalues them. The ability to communicate, the resilience to pick yourself up if you have a bit of a blip. The best way to practice that is through sport, and it's something that anybody can do. You don't have to be at elite level. It could be that you're a regular participant at a club, or you do sort of solo running or hiking or whatever it is. You can learn a lot of these skills, and at any age. We also see this in the research. So I think EY did a brilliant study. They're finding that women in C-level positions, C-suite positions, did sport, participated in sport sort of recreationally, like outside of your mandated PE. 50% of those continued that through to university. And then 7% of, women who did sport as well get paid 7% more. So wow. I think, I know. So it's quite interesting stats when you look at it, but I don't think it's that, you're sort of able to have a conversation about sport. I think it's actually those skills that you practice. It just sort of sets you up.
Certainly, by the sounds of your experiences in sport, following routines and building relationships and communicating, and to some extent sort of self-management, they'd all be really helpful in the career world, wouldn't they?
Yeah, and you can just apply the same mindset to anything.
And I think, like the determination, the resilience, like all of these skills. Going back to what you were saying about soft skills, I don't know. I genuinely don't know why we call it this, because I think it's the hardest things to learn. The idea of, that grit, that determination, the fact that it's absolutely pouring it down with rain and you are still going to be up, you are still going to be out, you are still going to be training, there's nothing that's going to shift you from that. And as well, in terms of communicating it afterwards, you may have just had the worst loss of your entire career, but you have to be this version of yourself, presenting yourself to the screen, to the media. You can't just completely fall apart after it. Petition to ban the phrase soft skills.
As well as the other word we were banning, Danielle. Sarah and I decided to ban the word just from our vocabulary. So now we're banning just and soft skills.
Love it.
through your books then, like Run Like a Girl, you've worked to challenge the way that we think about language and limitations.
Run Like a Girl, that features 50 female athletes from all around the world. And every chapter is like a girl. So win like a girl, score like a girl, throw like a girl. What I wanted to do is try and change that narrative of like a girl, because it's always been used as an insult. If you run like a girl, catch like a girl, throw like a girl, it's very pathetic. And I noticed that when I was competing, I train with the men, and we were sort of really similar in terms of scores and level when we're practicing. But if they were having a bad day, they'd be like, "Oh, I'm shooting like a girl," and you're just like,
what, like a gold medalist then?
Yeah, exactly. And they were pretty, they were a decent standard. So and actually when I engaged with sport, I also found that I wasn't always treated like a girl either, As a woman, my training plans were pretty much identical to the men, other than eat 500 less calories a day, and that was pretty much it. But it doesn't acknowledge or take into consideration any of the considerations of being female and what that entails. And a lot of the research was all done on male physiology. They didn't have that information about women's bodies. We don't hear about their stories as much as we should. But what we really should be doing is sort of encouraging them and seeing their performances for them as individuals. And actually that like a girl shouldn't be an insult. But and hopefully it just sort of gets people to see that phrase a little bit differently.
I think it's an absolutely iconic title for a book.
Yeah.
Growing up in the 90s, you didn't even realise you were being insulted. It was just a phrase that rolled off everybody's tongue.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. I'd agree. There's also in media and things like that as well, isn't it? When somebody's like running like a girl, it's always like all over the place, chaotic. It's not with any purpose or determination or any of these skills that we were talking about. It's like, oh, silly me, and just a bit all over the place.
There's a really good, I'll see if I can dig it up actually. There's a really good YouTube video where they get kids to run like a girl. They show them some sort of amazing female athletes like in between, and then get them to do it again. And then, it just, that message then clicks, and like, oh, I don't have to do this pathetic whatever it is.
To end our conversation, we like to give listeners one key takeaway from each episode. What's one idea, perspective, or piece of advice that you'd love them to carry with them after this conversation?
Oh, I would say invest in yourself. I think really, really important to, I guess, spend time getting to know yourself. The longest relationship we ever have is with ourselves. So trying to make it a good one is really important. So getting to know yourself, really understanding you, how your thought process works, but then building on that with confidence is so important. I would say, especially we've spent a lot of time talking about inclusion today. So you tend to find that the confidence gaps are enormous, and actually investing the time to build that confidence. It's something I did through sport. I wasn't super confident out of the blocks. I actually learned how to become more confident, and that has really served me well in sport and out of it. So that would be my takeaway.
I might take that on myself, actually.
I think everybody can apply that to themselves, can't they? Especially the idea, I love that idea that it's the longest relationship that you have.
Yeah, and I think we spend so much time getting to know other people, don't we? Like relationships, friendships, like in the workplace, but we just rarely spend the same time and effort and energy on ourselves.
Danielle, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. It's been absolutely incredible hearing all your insights, and especially all the other random questions that we've bobbed in there along the way.
Yeah, I agree. It's been very eye-opening to hear about your career and the work you've done to open doors for others.
Well, thank you. No, it's been amazing chatting.
And thank you to everyone listening. Don't forget to follow STEM Conversations wherever you get your podcasts, and join us next time for more stories and ideas shaping science, technology, engineering and maths.